All right. Welcome back to Why Math Why. This is an absolute value edition. Love the absolute value. It's often taught as, anytime we put in a number into the absolute value of anything. So if I take an absolute value of any kind of number, these absolute value bars, they magically make, quote unquote, a number positive. That's not really what's happening. What's happening is the absolute value is saying what is the distance on a number line that we are away from 0. So if I have the number -4 versus the number 4, how far away is -4 from 0? Well, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 away from 0. And also on the other side, 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces away from 0. So what that means is when I've got a y value like 4 and I set it equal to the absolute value of x, that means that x has two possibilities because we can either be all the way to the right 4 or all the way to the left 4 away. What does that mean? Well, we're going to look at the graph of the absolute value of x and why it ends up being a v. And no, it's not absolute value, and it's not because there's a v in value that you get the absolute value graph, although that is a pretty sweet coincidence. Here's why. And we're going to take a look at it, like I said, from the graphical perspective. So moving on from this idea right here, if you take a look at y equals the absolute value of x, what does the absolute value do to numbers? Well, let's just kind of do it from a perspective of just plugging in values into a table. So if I have x, and this is the absolute value of x, and those are our y values right there. And if I plug in some negative numbers, let's do some stereotypical numbers, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. I don't know how they're stereotypical, by the way. I guess they're just typical. If I take the absolute value of -2, I get 2. The absolute value of -1 is 1. The absolute value of 0 is 0. The absolute value of 1 is 1. And of 2 is 2. If we plot these points, you get -2, 2, -1, 1, it's right here, 0, 0, the origin, 1, 1, going right there, and 2, 2, going right here. And of course, if you connect those, let's see how neat I can do this, not very neatly, good thing I teach math, and you get the absolute value v. Okay, so that's kind of cool. And you see that, and that's nothing really revolutionary, but here's how I like to look at the absolute value graph. I actually like to look at it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to extend down a dotted line this way. And what that line is it represents the curve y equals x. So this right here is y equals x. But what happens is when you magically put that absolute value bar around x, this part, the negative part of y equals x, ends up flipping up about the x-axis, this being the x-axis right there. Why does it do that? Because every single negative y value that would have been there on y equals x has now become positive because we're saying what is the distance each of these y values is from 0. They're going to be the positive counterpart. So here, where it would have been at -1, the distance from 0 is +1. Here, where it would have been -2, the distance from 0 is +2. And then the distance that 1 is from 0 is 1, and so on and so forth, giving you that nice symmetry about the y-axis. Another way to look at it too is that you actually have, when x is greater than or equal to 0, we act like y equals x. That's this part. And when x is less than 0, we act like the opposite of x. And that's because whenever we have a negative value here, the pattern is we take the opposite sign of that negative value, and sure enough, look at that line. It's y equals -x. So this is actually what we call a piecewise function, or a function that is broken into two pieces. Here's y equals x, here's y equals -x. So a bunch of different ways to look at why the absolute value graph looks like a V. I think it's kind of cool making those connections and talking about absolute value because it's often something that's taken for granted as this really easy thing, which it is, but it's easy because we magically have these values turned to positive numbers. Man, I wish that worked that way with mortgages, right? Excuse me, bank, I'm going to take the absolute value of the amount of money I owe you, and magically you now owe me money. Yeah, I don't think it works that way. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoyed making it. I'll see you on the next one. Keep mathing hard, peeps. Till next time, peace.